Another podcast, whatever. Ever notice how we throw around that whatever word quite a bit? Sometimes when we use it when we just want to be dismissive, like, whatever. Or maybe when we don't really care, whatever. Or when we don't like something, whatever. We use that word, but really we ought to be paying attention to what's going on around us, what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what other people are saying, what they're experiencing. And so in the scripture, when God tells us that we're to think about certain things, he says, whatever is true, whatever is noble. Those are the first two things in a list of several that he mentions. He says, think about such things. And so instead of just having a whatever mindset that says, well, whatever goes on in here, whatever is going on out there, we could actually be more intentional about what we think about. So let's take the first two. Whatever is true, whatever is noble. Let's think about noble. Noble thoughts are higher thoughts than ours. They don't come naturally. They're different than our thoughts. And so Scripture tells us that God's thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His ways are different than ours. And so to have noble thoughts would be to fix our eyes on things above, things that are higher than ours. It's kind of like the attitude that goes, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. You're thinking noble. You're thinking, well, this is greater than me, and so I want to set my mind on that. Like when I was right out of college, I was a janitor at a church, but I didn't want to be a janitor. I wanted to be a student minister. Well, the ministers on staff at this church where I was working, they all wore ties and slacks every day of the office. And so even though I was coming to clean the building, I wore a tie and slacks and dress shoes while I cleaned the building. I was setting my mind on that, something noble, something that was beyond me that I wanted to pursue. In a similar fashion, when our thoughts are noble, we're thinking, okay, what does God think about this? Where is his mind on this matter? It's not just a whatever mindset. It's like, no, I want noble thoughts. And how about truth? Boy, there's a hot button topic in our world today, the issue of truth. Well, first of all, let's deal with the biggest question. Is there absolute truth? Absolutely, there's absolute truth. I mean, simple logic dictates that there has to be absolute truth. For instance, if you say, well, hold on there can't be absolute truth. There is no absolute truth. As many really smart people would like to say, I would just ask a follow-up question to that. So you're telling me there's no absolute truth? That's right, there's no absolute truth. Are you sure of that? Well, yes, I'm sure of that. Are you absolutely sure of that? You see, if you say there's no absolute truth, then you've established an absolute truth. Therefore, there has to be at least one absolute truth, which leaves the door open for many absolute truths. There are absolute truths. But there's also other kinds of truths. There's circumstantial truths, things that are true in some circumstances and not in others. There's relative truths. I'll give you an example. There is air to breathe. Right now, I'm breathing air. That's an absolute. Now, circumstantially, I could say to you, well, the air is 80 degrees. Well, I'm inside, and so that's a controlled environment. In one place, if I'm under a vent, it's 80. In another place, it might be 79.2. It's circumstantial based on where you are positionally. And then I could say, well, it's hot. That would be a relative truth. You could argue with me and say, well, no, it's cold. And I would say, no, it's hot. Why are we arguing about this? You see, there's all kinds of truth. But when we think about whatever is true, we fix our minds on God's truth. And those are things that are either absolutely true or almost always true. Now, people like to talk about the exceptions to things all the time. I would say, hey, look, if it's generally true, let's just go with it. And let's think about those things. These things are true, they're good, and they'll lead us in paths of righteousness that glorify God and help others experience who God is. So whatever is true, whatever is noble, think about those things.